Hey guys, welcome back. This is video number 3 and how to build an RC plane. We're building the Slow stick from GWS. This video is all about how to program the radio. So I've built the airframe, I've installed the electronics and set them up as close as I can to flying conditions before programming, so hopefully everything should go real smoothly. Now that I have all this installed on the plane, I'm ready to power it up. So I'm going to plug in the battery. And once you plug in the battery and you know everything is armed and ready to go, it's a good idea to unplug the motor so that in case you're in here adjusting something on the radio, you don't accidentally bump the stick or change something and have the throttle go off on you. So I'm going to disconnect this, so there's no chance of that. That really doesn't feel good when those props hit you. In the worst case scenario, your plane takes off off the table and you ruin everything you just built. So always a good idea to unplug that, or you can remove the prop, either way. Now we know that's ready to go, I can set up my servos. Now the first thing I want to do is make sure the servos are moving in the right direction. So when I pull back on the stick, my elevator goes up, and we can check that right now. I'll give you a better point of view here. If I pull back on the stick, elevator should go up, and it does. Obviously it goes down when I push. And if I turn the stick to the right, the rudder follows as well, to the left and to the right. So we know it's going in the right direction. That's a great start. If it doesn't, you have to go into your menu under servo reverse and flip those channels. Now that I know they're moving in the right direction, I want to set up my trims. So I want to make sure that all my trims on the radio itself are centered. Again, I'll show you what I mean. Here are 2 trim knobs for the channels I'll be adjusting, and on my screen it shows me the trim adjustment. So I want to put this right to the center, right there, and same with the aileron channel, which is actually running our rudder at the moment. Make sure those are centered perfectly. I know that that's centered. I know that I don't have any sub trims because I haven't programmed anything yet for those. So my servos are as centered as they're ever going to be when I turn my radio on. If you look at the servo horns, you can see they're pretty straight. Yes, I could go ahead and straighten those out with a sub trim even farther, and you can do that if you want to. That's good enough for me. That's as perfect, as close to a 90 as I feel like I want to get. Now again, you could go into your radio, you can use the sub trim function to fine tune these and get them at a perfect 90. For this plane, this is good enough, so I got them right where I want them. Now that I know the trims are where I want them to be on the radio side, I want to check them mechanically on the plane to see how close my surfaces are to being straight. So I'm going to give you the angle. You can see the elevator, it's pitched up just slightly, and the rudder is pitched over just slightly. Now if we were in the air out flying, we would just go into our radio, click over the trims and center that. But because we're here on the bench, we're setting it up, we want to avoid using our digital trims if possible. We want to have it mechanically centered so that we have the full range of digital trims to play with later on. So what I'm going to do is use my handy little pieces of hardware I put on my servo horns. They have a set screw that I can loosen, readjust the rod to get it real close to center, and then I can tighten it back down. Do the same thing for the elevator here. Bring it down just a little bit until it's as close to center as I can get, and then set that down. Okay, so my digital trims are centered, and now my mechanical trims are centered. I'll give you another shot. The rudder, nice and straight, and the elevator, pretty straight. A little up elevator isn't going to hurt anything. But now I know that I have a full range of trims to play with. So once we have that all set, I know it's moving the right direction, my trims are set correctly, we can go ahead and adjust our travel. Now on a radio like the DX6i, we do have options for dual rates. I can set 2 separate rates for travel for windy conditions, mild acrobatics, or what have you, a beginner setting, an advanced setting, any way you want to list it. You can go ahead into your dual rate menu and adjust your rates. For our high rates though, I want to make sure that our elevator and rudder aren't traveling too far. Now the manual is going to tell you exactly how far they recommend you to have the throw in terms of inches off of centered. So they'll tell you, let's say they want 2 inches off centered, you'd move the rudder over and measure to see if you have 2 inches. On a plane like this where it's rudder only control, I like to have a ton of rudder throw. So this is good, this is where I want it. Seems a little extensive, but man, when it gets windy out there in a plane like this, you want to be able to have that extra bit to play around with. Now the downside there is we do have a little too much throw for normal flying. That's where the dual rates can come in handy. I can program these switches so I can turn it down, and then it would only travel, say, that far instead. Again, that's dual rates for you. Now we'll check the elevator. Give it full deflection. We can see we have a problem here. It's actually touching the rudder. You can see it just hits it there. Down is fine. Up is just a little bit too much. We don't want to hit in the rudder because that's going to drag, and then that's going to cause some really strange flight characteristics. So we can go into the radio again, and I can remove some of the travel in that direction. We want to go to elevator, and in the up direction, you actually want to pull on the stick a little bit to make sure you're adjusting the right one. I'm going to bring it down, and I'll show you as I do it. So I bring it full deflection, and I start to reduce the throw until it just doesn't touch, and right about there. You can see there's just a little gap. That is perfect. The rudder can move freely, as well as the elevator. Perfect. So we got our travel just right where we want it. And now we can make sure that our throttle works. So I unplugged the motor before. I'm going to plug it back in. And we're going to make sure it's spinning the right direction. Now I'm running a brushless motor, so it's very easy for me to fix it if it's going the wrong way. Let's throttle up and make sure it works. And it works. I'm blowing air this way like I'd like. If it was spinning in the wrong direction on a brushless motor, I can take my 3 connections here and reverse any 2 of them. There's no special polarity. I can take any 2 of them, reverse them, and the motor will spin the opposite way. Now if it's a brushed motor, it's not so simple. You want to make sure that you have the correct polarity. They should be set up to go the right way. If you reverse direction on a brushed motor, you got to have the ability to adjust the timing as well. Because if you don't adjust the timing, you can burn it out in short order, and you won't have much power spinning it in reverse. On top of that, props are only made to go on one way. So make sure that your prop is facing the right way. You can still put it on wrong and get thrust coming out the back. You just won't have a whole lot of it, so the plane would fly terribly. You might think you have it all set up right. Then you go ahead and launch it your first day and it hits the ground. So what you want to make sure is that you have the lettering on the prop. There's always a little bit of lettering facing the front. You may not be able to pick this up on the camera, but right here is a little bit of lettering, and I know that's facing the front. And if you look very carefully at how props are molded, especially plastic ones, the proper side, the thrust side, or the back side, is very smooth, and it's got an airfoil curved into it, where the front side's kind of dull. So again, make sure it's facing the right way and the motor's spinning the right way. Now we got our whole plane set up. She's ready for flight. The very first flight, the maiden flight, when you take it out, you want to make sure you have absolutely no wind, a large open area, and you got to remember that the plane may not fly straight. We've done all we can to assure that the plane is built straight and all our elevators and rudders are straight, but the plane still may need some trimming. And a lot of that has to do with just different characteristics of different planes. There's too many variables to account for. So on your first flight, keep in mind you might have to trim it out a little bit. It might be going up, might be going down to the right or left, and you'll have to use your remote trims to compensate. The most important thing before you first fly it is the center of gravity. That's in the manual as well. A good rule of thumb, the center of gravity, the balance point on a plane, is about 1/3 of the way back on the wing. So this is our wing mount here. And it'd be about 1/3 back, so right about here. And in the manual, they'll give the exact position they recommend. It'll have to be something you play around with, because again, you may have the plane built a little bit differently, so center of gravity might change, but keep in mind it's about here. So we put the wing on, bolt it on, put your battery in place where you're going to have it. Personally, mine will be sitting up front here, and then we'll lift the plane up from that center point, or about 1/3 of the way back on the wing, and make sure that the nose tips down a little bit. If she's back heavy, it'll fly terribly. Nose heavy is always safe. So when in doubt, make it a little nose heavy and you'll be all right. Well guys, that's all I have for you in this tutorial. If you have any questions at all regarding how to build a plane, how to program it, set it up, anything at all, comment below. I'll try to answer your questions best I can. I appreciate you guys watching this video. We'll see you next time.